Hello, I'm Jason Rader, and welcome to today's Insight Live, the IT Experts Take. Today we're talking about the ideal life cycle experience. Sounds like fun. I've got a couple of experts with me that are going to walk through this. We've got Harjo Sidhu, who's a senior technical architect. We've got Brian Kettleman, director of operations and global logistics. And we have one of our favorites, Joe Flynn, director of modern workplace and distinguished technologist here with us at Insight. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
So, now we might have folks who didn't read necessarily the brief on what the ideal lifecycle experience is. I joked about what mine might be. It might include a pina colada, but what are we talking about today, Joe?
Today, we're actually talking about the device lifecycle experience. So if you think of everything required for a company to procure a device, to do the setup and configuration of a device, break fix, warranty, support, end of life. So as you think of retrieval of a device, even disposal. So that entire life cycle, and even to the point of potentially how does the device get handled when it's in the user's hands from a day-to-day support perspective at the same time.
Wow, that sounds like a lot. And that sounds like a lot. From somebody who doesn't necessarily think about that every day. There's a lot that's potentially on the front end and the back end that a lot of people probably don't think about. So you folks out there, we'd love to see your comments and stay tuned for as we talk about this. So let's get this kind of, what do we think? Let's start with what problem are we solving with the ideal experience? Who wants to take that one?
Brian?
Me?
Yeah, no, I'll take it. Yeah, so I think the ideal experience, right, for any organization is making sure that those devices are relevant and they're patched and they're secure, right, and that at the end of the day, their end users, that device is their gateway into their environment and their work life, right? So it's so critically important from that perspective. So the ability to, from a new hire, getting that device in their hands before they start work, ready to go, not having to mess around with getting set up from an IT perspective, constant support model around it from an IT help desk perspective, and the ability to swap out if the device goes down, right? All the way down to, hey, I'm time for a refresh. It's been 3 or 4 years. I need a new device in order to continue to be effective in my job, right? And so how does an organization put all those activities together, right? So it's almost seamless for the end user and they can continue to support their business.
I think one thing I want to add to that is I think driving with the latest technologies, we have a ton of technologies now. If you think of ServiceNow and a lot of the cloud tools, I think driving that ideal experience is also tying in the integration into the customer's environment, because that drives a seamless experience for the end user with the integration with whoever their provider is, right? From a partner perspective on procurement, because now you have that two-way traffic of sending data back and forth, requests back and forth, and it's a lot more streamlined, but more importantly, it's keeping everything in the customer's own environment at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, there's two major issues that my focus has largely honed in on, which is number one, integration, the second being asset management. So really, if you want to boil it down, the integration is all about not requiring our clients to have to swivel between different systems, right? So having to pivot from their own internal ticketing system to some portal where they might be ordering the necessary equipment or checking externally for the status of that order. Did it ship? What's the tracking number? Is it in the user's hands? So that's one major aspect to keep everything within the client system. Joe mentioned ServiceNow, but really making sure it works with all of the client's ticketing system, no matter what they might be using from a procurement perspective or ITSM. And then secondly, to have ongoing visibility of the asset long after we ship it. Right? So again, we used to historically be, and this would be a common scenario, we'd be fire and forget. We'd ship it out the door and then leave it to the client or the end user to really continue to monitor from there. But now with asset management, we want to give that cradle to grave visibility for our clients.
And, you're talking about stuff that I hadn't, as an end user, typically from my perspective on this, you don't think about a lot of those things. But as I'm thinking about it, and I didn't prep you guys for this question, but it sounds like, there's a bunch of cost associated with doing this inefficiently. I mean, it can kind of ravel out of control. Is there an ideal number of employees or something is there a sweet spot for something like this? I mean, can it be as small as 50, 25 people? Does that work too?
It could, I mean, from a lifecycle perspective, I mean, absolutely. We do those capabilities for small customers. I think to take advantage of like pure integration, I think you're probably going to find your larger customers, let's say 1,000 users, 750 above, usually probably have the ITSM systems of a ServiceNow or something else, right? It's probably not going to be those two much smaller companies. But think about, I mean, so I'm throwing a question back at you, Jason. Like you're a CISO, right? You're insights CISO. And think about when Harjo talks about from a lifecycle perspective, visibility. Like how confident do you think most companies realize how many devices are lost, stolen? How many devices they don't even know where they are, right? They were in someone's hands one day, and the next day they're in a desk or they're just sitting somewhere. So that also brings up a security concern. I'm sure you're thinking, wow, I don't want to deal with that, right? But it's even a security concern you have to worry about, not understanding where your visibility is of all these devices at the same time.
Yeah. I'm not sure where the question was in that, Joe.
Well, because he's our CISO, so I wanted to approach it to him on his thoughts of not knowing and having the ability to know where a device is, not physically where it is, but at what state is it at any one time.
No, he actually softened it a little bit because, like, well, how do you know? And then he's like, well, wouldn't you want to know? So he gave you the out. But no, that is a perfect point. And I hear that a lot from CISOs. I don't know what I don't know. And adding the level of, with the ubiquity of devices these days, and nobody is considering that they're not going to work to some degree on their mobile. And it's one of those things where, having the ability to manage that, and the control that you can get, and also just the confidence in the delivery, all the way to the destruction of that is having the right images on it. I mean, do I want my executives updating their own phones and those kinds of things? I mean, all of that is something that is a consideration that, again, adds to what I would, kind of call this giant cost associated with doing this inefficiently. It can get crazy. So so it sounds like, my guess, and I don't know how correct this is, but that fire and forget model that was mentioned earlier, that sounds like how somebody like Insight or other folks would probably operate. And it was probably a request or clients that were asking for, no, we want this additional capability, we want this service from you. So what kind of are the things that clients are asking for related to the whole life cycle from a device perspective?
Well, I think historically we have to look at, we're kind of in a golden age of available capabilities, right? It used to be that our contracts with our clients or our reporting to our clients would say, well, we're going to give you a bulk Excel report once a month on everything that might be sitting in stock that you own or that we've shipped. And then as we've gained greater and greater capability, as more tools have been deployed, both within Insight and with our clients, now we've accelerated that. So you know what, now we'll provide those reports on a daily basis and we'll be able to provide that to you. Now we're going to provide those reports, not just in Excel, but now we'll be able to provide it as an API feed. So we'll actually send a JSON payload to whatever system you want to use to be able to process that. And then it used to be, we'll let you know when it's shipped and here's the tracking number. And then you use your FedEx, UPS, and other APIs to determine where it might have landed. But then clients are really very much looking for that proof of delivery from us, as you might have been asking there, Jason. So not only are we now starting to extend that visibility to know, did FedEx or UPS or Purolator, DPD, DHL, whatever the major shippers around the world might be, did they actually deliver it? Or do they have some sort of exception? And in our most advanced capabilities, we actually put in auto exception capability, extended transit times that exceed what we expect. So the carrier is continuing to indicate that it's in transit, but we shipped this today. It should have landed, days ago. So we automatically flag that as an alert. Probably one of my favorites is that we show confirmed delivery to our users with our most advanced offering, and we then flag it as concerning if they don't start using it within 7 days. So we actually can identify that we have confirmed delivery 7 days later, not in use. What's going on? And there's a couple of possibilities. It could have gotten stolen off the port, unreported lost or stolen. Maybe the user doesn't know how to set it up. Maybe they didn't need it in the first place. They're using a personal laptop, happy to use that. All of those really critical to varying degrees within the organization, whether it's support or security or finance.
Yeah. I mean, a layer in there, right? So you think about all the things that Harjo just talked about. If an organization was trying to figure that on their own, that's an army of people that are kind of checking on those statuses, right? So now you've got an army of people that are doing that from an IT perspective. They're also trying to go hit their strategic priorities, right, for their own business. And so when we talk with our clients today, they're like, we need to get out of the device business so we can focus fast on our strategic priorities. And that's where organizations like Insight come in, and we say, let's think about this different for you, right? Like, how do you think about it from asset management all the way through to delivery and disposal while keeping that environment secure, and you understand where those devices are at any given point in time, right? And so it gives a peace of mind for a CIO, right, a CTO, that, look, I can go focus on what I need to get done, and all the pots and pans, if you will be taken care of by a partner like Insight.
And there's a big chunk in the middle that you kind of skipped over there, Brian, which is on our sustainability services. So, Joe, I don't know if you want to talk about your little handy dandy metric around recirculation of devices. Do you want to mention that?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk to most customers in the lifecycle experience, many customers buy next day warranty or warranties with the devices, right? Whether it's 1 year or 3 years. But what customers don't realize is, even if it's next day, an engineer from, let's say, the OEM or the warranty can come out the next day, but it very well may not be fixed the next day because maybe he doesn't have the part, maybe he can't fix it. So then that person is potentially without a device for a period of time. And I think that's where services like our sustainability services, and there's others out there, but it offers the capability of us being able to send the user a new device and let them ship the old device back. Let your partner worry about the warranty, the break fix. But then what we start tracking now when we can do that is, how many times do we send a device back out to the company? So if we're thinking about sustainability metrics that a company has to start thinking through, am I refurbishing, am I repurposing my devices instead of potentially just disposing of the devices? Or better yet, maybe we get a device back that we can't fix. Maybe it's out of warranty. Now the device has to be disposed of. Now the bigger question is it in a state that potentially it can have some resale value and be resold? Or does it have to be disposed of? And that resale value, again, goes back to, from a sustainability perspective, and the customer's also getting money back. So a ton of value. And a lot of customers, when we speak to it, think of, oh, I have warranty, I'm perfectly fine. Possibly. But if you think through the fact that a user could be potentially days without a PC, how are you tracking from a disposal perspective? How are you trying to repurpose the devices? Are you, like Brian said initially, is the life of that device the right life, right? You may say it's 3 years. Maybe you can get it out to 4 years. Maybe the device can be, or maybe there's an issue with the device and you got to potentially refresh it less. That's where all these capabilities come in that most customers just don't, it's just not part of their day-to-day to have to think through. And then when they finally see what the vision of what can be done, it's like a light switch goes on. It's like, oh, wow, that is actually really good. And I got to start thinking of something like that.
Oh, great. That's, you're talking about all the things, from a security perspective, we often say, I don't want to be in the business of doing stuff that isn't core to me. And you guys mentioned already, hey, do I want to be in the business of acquiring devices, managing those things, disposing of those things? And I don't think anybody really got into business unless they literally are doing that to be in that kind of business. And I think, as I asked that earlier question, what are the clients kind of asking for? They're asking for more and more. And the warranty is a perfect example. I know personally, I can't stand to even when I purchased the warranty, just doing it is painful. And having somebody sit in between you and the manufacturer to do that on your behalf and dispatch a new one that's in your customer owned inventory to you while that's happening and repurpose the other. That's amazing. That's
you just sold it for everybody.
Yeah, hey, I'm not a sales guy. Yeah. But I think that it's easy for somebody who's a business guy to recognize when something like that is taking a huge amount off of my plate and potentially, in the long scheme of things, saving money because it's the efficiencies. That's what I always say about Insight. We do a lot of stuff and we figure it out, right? All of the things that we were talking about in this and other things, once we've figured out, we can monetize it over and over with our clients throughout the world. And global is something we should come back to. But the clients who, even if they nailed this, if they figured it out as well as we did, which takes a lot of time and effort, they're only going to be able to monetize it that time for themselves, unless they're in the business of doing it. So it is one of those things where it's in our best interest to be really good at that because it's what makes us profitable. But it's also, it's not something that I think people would be interested in the level of effort to duplicate that themselves.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch a client throw a ton of resources at incrementally moving towards what you do well already.
Sure.
right? And that's sometimes what we witness, because again, our most advanced asset management offering just came out, was relaunched, several months or just about a year ago. But so we have some clients that were using kind of that standard feeds and shipping data, and then they're like, well, can you help us figure out how we're tapping into the shipping providers and our UEM systems, MDM systems internally, and then how do we know when something is supposed to be coming back to you, and they tie into the ticketing system to determine those returns back to us. So that's unfortunate to watch, because that's a lot of resources going towards something that is readily available effectively out of the box from our perspective. So that so that's tough to watch, and then we're able to work with them more closely on that one. One thing that really is exciting as we've gained greater integration and asset management capability is the increasing scope of what is considered an asset, right? And so originally, I think we'd be focused on laptops and desktops and those elements, but at some point, a client has kind of a threshold of a dollar value and saying anything below that is a consumable. We're not going to consider that. But as you gain greater efficiencies, as you gain greater automation, that threshold can start now dropping to say, some of those high-end monitors, those are pretty valuable, right?
That's a trick. And so along that path, Harjo, when you see clients, they probably, if they're nailing it within their country, their headquarters is located in, they're typically pretty good at that. And then as they start to do a global endeavor, do they run into any problems in your experience?
Wait, pretty much know the answer. Brian, you want to touch on that?
Yeah. So that's my life. I live it every day. And we see clients in various states of affair in terms of, like, they have a global strategy and they're deploying that locally. Sometimes that local deployment of that strategy is struggled through cultural expectations, right, and delivery, struggled by resourcing in those countries. So what we generally find is, like, in multinational companies, they are working towards that centralized strategy, but most of the time the local IT leader in that country is left to fend for themselves. So they're finding their devices, right? They may be sweating those assets for 5 years. They're getting it off of, wherever they can get it, whether it's a Amazon or a Best Buy or whatever, right? And so they don't have a centralized control over their spend at all, right? And then, right, managing to the level that Harjo was talking about, of where's those devices in their environment, it's non-existent. It's like, think about countries like India or Malaysia or, right, you name it, kind of in Eastern Asia. Like, it's really hard to kind of figure out how are those devices being used, especially as a lot of those countries have pushed their users to go work from home, right? And so they're 2 hours away from the home office at that point. So as you bring this into a multinational construct, right, it becomes much harder in order to manage that. And that's where using the tool sets like Harjo was talking about is not worrying on people to pull it together, using your systems and your modernized environment to get there.
There's 3 major elements that provide, at least from my perspective, a major challenge as you globalize, right? Number 1 is the shippers. Right. So I'll actually do it in order of kind of the life cycle flow. So actually the first challenge would be the global stocking location, right? So is it housed within a facility such as Insight, right? So we have our primary stocking locations globally, or is it being housed in partner locations? So being able to get reliable data on a timely basis, so we have to solve for that situation, which we have. Then secondly is the shipper. So, okay, so now we got a feed saying that they've shipped it off. Now, 6 months ago, UPS changed their identification of a delivery in their API feed, which caused a major disruption. And that's UPS. Imagine having to deal with that with dozens of shippers globally, right? And so that caused a huge headache. And then again, you're having to deal with all of this situation, whether they have even data that they can provide or not. And then the last challenge is around disposal, right? So how are those assets being disposed of in all of the various nations that you might be working with? So there's some elements that are inherently global, right? MDM and UEM systems that, you're going to use Intune, you're going to use Jamf, you're going to use Workspace ONE, whatever you might be using. It is by its nature going to be global, which facilitates that global nature well. But those 3 elements have been particularly challenging.
You left out one though. I mean, and I'm going to throw this question back at Brian. You talked about stock, but it's about procurement, right? Because once you start going globally, It's what countries can you ship into, what countries do you have to potentially buy into. So I mean,
Yeah.
Brian, you know that better than I do, but I wanted
Right.
to bring it up as if it's important.
Yeah, especially around end user devices. In most cases, you do not want to look at an export as a strategy, right? Because you have different power needs, you have different right keyboard requirements, and also the warranty, right? So in some OEMs, if you export their product, warranty's void, right? No longer good. You got to bring it back to home country to do that. So trying to figure out what's your procurement strategy in that country with your preferred OEM. It takes a partner that understands a global scale, right, and how to go deliver on that from that perspective. So one of the things that I love about our organization is we exist and we can deliver to 43 countries on our own, and we've expanded our network to hit just about 85 different countries, right? So from a multinational scale, you want to be able to go to one company, give them your priorities, give them their requirements, and then know that they can deliver on your behalf.
It's not easy.
No.
And that sounds, I mean, most organizations that we talk to are typically in the business of wanting to scale or grow. And, you know, if they're about to leave the country, you know, these are the kinds of things that I'd way better as a business person. I want to be on the understanding of the complexities that you guys just talked about. So those last, you know, couple of minutes is a golden nugget for folks out there that are thinking about this, their expansion globally without thinking about the device aspect could be a big gotcha additional, you know, all the way from, we're talking security issues, we're talking about usability issues, we're talking about acquire, all of those things that, you know, were surprising when you just mentioned them. So I felt worth talking about because that was
absolutely
good. So naturally, as insight, you know, we've been listening to customers for a long time when, like I mentioned earlier, this kind of evolves. And I think it's fair, you know, we don't typically do salesy type things on this, but I do think it's fair because, you know, when I go to buy something, I like them to kind of present it to me and like, we have this package, this package, this package, right? We at Insight have kind of put everything together from a device perspective. Who wants to take a shot at explaining that?
Yeah, I'll kick off, Joe, if you want to cover in there. So Insight's looked at what typically is known as a device as a service portfolio. And we've looked at it from our perspective and what our clients are really looking for, right? They're looking for a broad breadth of services, but predictability in their spend, right? There's a lot of companies that can provide Lego blocks of services out there, but then you're stuck in an event-based motion. So I don't know what my invoice is going to look like from month to month or year to year. And I've got to reconcile that invoice back to what I actually received. So in the bundle that Jason was talking about, we have what we call our Flex for Device program that exists in 3 different bundles: Essentials, Advanced, and Premier. And it is our response, and is our multinational response to providing a end-to-end service from procurement of the device, right, management of the warehousing, provisioning that device into your image, and then delivering it to an end user, right? So that bundle right there that I just spoke about is our essential package. So if you're working on just a refresh motion and you need some help with that, that's where that bundle really comes in handy. Add on to that what we call our advanced bundle, and that includes our sustainability services that Joe talked about earlier. Is users down in the field, you got an advanced exchange that hits them up with a new machine as we retrieve the old machine for repair. Retrieval events. So you're going to have people that are going to leave your organization. What do you do with that asset? How do you retrieve that asset? Right. So Insight will go and pull that device back from that end user by sending a box and a return label. Right. Track that to make sure that it actually has been received. Clean it up. Get it back on the shelf, ready for its useful life. And then at the end of the day, we can dispose of those assets that are no longer viable. That's in our advanced package there. And our final one is Premier, right? And Premier adds all those things, but it also adds in, like, if you need help with a managed service task or a managed endpoint, making sure you're from an MDM perspective, all the patching and everything is done, right? From that perspective, right? That's all encompassed. We wrapped that around with a service called DEX, right? A digital employee experience. And that is a key piece of glue to the entire bundles, because what we're doing is we're actually managing those devices at the edge and seeing what the experience looks like. Not only from like the device health, right? Battery and hard drives and all that, but what networks are it hitting? Is it latency is low, right? All those things we get back from this tool set to help you either make a decision on when you want to refresh devices, right? Can you sweat an asset a little bit longer? Does something need to come sooner just because it's in a bad state, right? Or making sure that your end users are just having a good experience with their machines, right? And that is a global opportunity, a global scale service for us. So Flex, all three bundles, those are available. We are proficient in North America, US, Canada. We provide that through the UK and the European Union. We have partners that deliver that same service in Mexico, Brazil, India, and Japan as well. We continue to expand that service right on a regular basis in order to, so I joke with my team, our goal is to take over the world, right? They call me the brain because of it. So it's our goal is to try to minimize the complexity of global for our clients, and we believe that Flex is the right way to do that.
I want to add to that because I mean you brought it up, and I'm glad you did. Is the DEX, or the digital experience platform? That's now a big ask. Like if we look at pretty much almost all of our enterprise level customers, they want DEX because now when you tie it into a lifecycle experience, now I can make data-driven decisions on do I have to refresh early? Can I extend the life of this device to 4 to 5 years? Or possibly you could even go as far as saying, hey, this specific model with this specific amount of memory is peaked for most users, right? The average CPU. Give you a good example, right? I'm testing the new AI PCs, and I'm finding as I'm using them that 16 gig of RAM is just not enough. It's really not. And compared to the similar x64, I love the PCs. I think they're great, and they're definitely faster. Battery life is amazing, but 16 gig of RAM, I mean, I'm peaked constantly on, no, it doesn't matter if I'm using Microsoft, HP, Dell, they're all running right about the same at 16 gig. And so those are decisions that the DEX tool can give you. Even if you also wrap into decisions around, I don't want to open up a can of worms, but like software side, software auditing. Like how many users are using a specific version of a software that's licensed? Do I have too many versions out there? But then even extended as far as personas. Do specific people in a persona have the right device in their hands? Is the device underpowered, overpowered? If it's overpowered, can I kind of shrink it down and maybe get a lower cost device and repurpose the other device? So there's so much, like the whole point, the lifecycle capabilities is key, right? We talked about from procurement to disposal, but it's being able to, what can you do within the life of that device to get more value out of it, but then more importantly, to save the company money and increase the user experience and security.
That is awesome. I'm glad you added that to it because I think, I'm constantly in our board meetings and clients' board meetings talking, and that data-driven aspect of things is where the expectation these days. This whole, in retrospect kind of thing isn't buying it anymore. We've got to have data-driven predictability, those kinds of things, and I think that's really exciting to be able to provide that. So, and that's cool. And the global offering sounds pretty neat. Well.
Jason, you had touched a little earlier on the warranty element, right? So the warranty end date and the value that would provide. But then, you're talking about the data elements. So you have obviously warranty end date data. You have the DEX information and the data that Joe was talking about. You have lease end data. We talked about recirculation. But all of those ultimately combining into information that tells you what is your target device list for refresh, right? Because all of those things has an influence, right? If something recirculates multiple times, there's probably something inherently wrong in that device potentially. So all of those need to drive towards that potential refresh activity. Maybe it shouldn't be a huge project and it should be something on demand as the assets are coming through the circulation rather than making a big project out of it. But I do want to talk about, I think, one of the latest and greatest services that are coming out related to that activity is that it's wonderful that we can provide that information saying these 400 assets are likely overdue for a refresh. But then the next ask that clients have come to us with and saying, can you take charge in terms of communication for that refresh activity? Right. So we provide that data, we feed it directly into the client's systems to allow them to automate. But a lot of clients are saying, we're not really ready for that, but any chance you can communicate and prompt for that refresh activity? And so that is the new service that we have put in place. I think we're changing the name on it in particular, but clients have been asking for us to go ahead and take initiative and communicate on their behalf to be able to get that done. Yeah,
agreed. We had a client that came to us the other day, and well, it was more than the other day, but they Brian and Insight, how do we get to I'm a zero touch, right? So if I've given you this opportunity, I've outsourced this service to you, right? I don't want to have to be in the middle, right? So that communication element is that one last piece that makes that a zero touch solution for them.
That's great. And I love that when clients make requests, we take that back and try to solve that problem, make it part of the solution. I mean, that's another gratifying thing about working for a company like this, is that that's the way that we operate.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, everyone wins in that scenario, right?
Right.
If we can streamline that and grease the wheels, I mean, the user gets a better experience, Insight gets another device out the door, clients are happy.
That's the best part, I think, of Insight, is we have so much subject matter expertise. We do so much. It's taking all those lessons learned from all those customers, and how do we turn it into value for everybody at the same time? So everyone's getting the value of all the asks that we get, right? The questions, problems we run into, the solutions we get, and then turns into value for everybody.
Love it. Well, guys, this has been a very gratifying discussion on the ideal lifecycle experience. I had way more fun than I thought it was going to. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you out there for watching along and for all of your comments and suggestions. Please keep those up. If you want to learn more about what we do here at Insight, please visit us at insight.com. Thanks, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.